Todd. Hi everybody, welcome. So, sniffing out an unhealthy Salesforce org with Python. Firstly, I want to apologise for these slides. I couldn't be bothered to change them. They're in the style for a learning, what would you call it, seminar that we do at Starlam, and everything had to be branded in this way. I wouldn't normally present things that look like this. But anyway, this is me, obligatory slide. You're not interested in that. Why are we here? This is what we're going to cover. So, why are we here? What's that smell? Where's it coming from? And how do I get rid of it, right? That's what we're going to cover in 45 minutes or less. So, do you have a client, or do you have a Salesforce org that is creaking at the seams? Is it falling apart? You know, have you been called in to assess it? Have you been landed on a new project day one? You haven't got a clue what's going on. What are you going to do? How are you going to work out the mess you're in? So how many people, hands up, how many people have been in the situation where you get dumped with a project and you haven't got a clue what's in the org, it looks like a bit of a mess, clients complaining about it, yeah, everyone, right. So what are you going to do? You're going to have to look for the smells. So, what could be some symptoms of an unhealthy org? Can anyone give some suggestions before I dive into my ideas? Go for it. Hit the limits. Okay, so getting error messages all over the place. Limits. Yep. Any others?
Loads of fields.
Loads of fields. Yes. Screen layouts full of fields that no one ever fills in.
Poor performance response times.
Poor response times. Yep. Any other ideas? Todd.
Confusing security.
Confusing security. Yes, I like that one.
Without sharing everywhere.
Without sharing in Apex classes. Yep. So, if we boiled that down, I reckon you could look at it in a much higher level. So you've dived straight into the detail of looking at the logs, looking at the screen layouts. If the system is hard to use, hard to understand, hard to maintain, you can't understand the security model, hard to modify because you don't know where the code's going, it's a bit of a big mess, then it's unhealthy. So, let's dive into that in a bit more detail. How would you know whether the system's hard to use? So people can't get stuff done. So their page layout's full of fields. Nobody can do their job properly. There's loads of out-of-date information, so your data quality is rubbish. And the system performs poorly. It's sluggish. You're getting timeouts. Screens take ages to load. So it's hard to use. That's what hard to use means. Hard to understand. How would you want to get that symptom? Well, if it takes ages to teach people how to use the system. So if you're in a service centre situation and it takes you 2 weeks to bring someone on board and get them actually usable in the call centre answering calls using Salesforce, that's really bad. They should be able to get straight onto the system and get going. It should be intuitive. If it takes ages to train new administrators or developers on how to interact with the system, that is also bad. Maintenance then. So if you've got spaghetti-like interdependencies between code and flows, if you've got no consistent way of doing stuff, that's going to make it hard to maintain. So you can't move. You won't get the right level of velocity if you're using Agile. You won't be able to do the stuff you want to do. So your business is going to be frustrated by how sluggish you respond. And those poor administrators, if they have to bring on a new user, they create the new user record, right? Assign the permission sets and the profiles. Oh, but they need to be in these public groups, they need to be in these roles, all this stuff. That can make it really difficult. And the more different ways you've got of giving new permissions, new bits of functionality to people, the harder it is to audit. Has anyone, in hands up now, had to produce a spreadsheet for an auditor of system access controls for everybody in the system so that they can prove that people don't have access to the wrong things? Hands up then. It's a pain, isn't it? A real pain. Unfortunately, I haven't fixed that one yet, but never mind. We'll get on to that. Right, next one was hard to modify. So if it's fragile, right, so if it's breaking all the time, you try and make a change somewhere and users are complaining that this created a bug, or if you've got a huge backlog in your Agile board of changes that you can't make because you've got to get agreement from across the business, that's a pain, isn't it? So you end up finding that actually one of the symptoms of this is that you go and ask people what they're doing. They don't bother to ask you to make changes to Salesforce. They just create a spreadsheet. They're just doing stuff in their books off the side, basically going around the fact that your platform can't support what they want to do. So we are now have got to the end of this bit, which is what is the smell. So it's smelly if it's hard to use, hard to understand, hard to maintain, and hard to modify. You could remember that as use, understand, maintain, and modify, or just yeah, it stinks. So what are we going to do about it? This is the good bit. Let's find those smells and get rid of them, yeah? Well, this is rocket science, isn't it? It's really crazy. And then we profit, maybe, if we charge by the hour. Or maybe not. Maybe charge by value instead. So, how are we going to sniff out those bad smells? We need a set of queries over our data and our metadata that flags them up to us. We don't want to be going off and having to do all this manually, because that is a massive pain. We want them to be reusable. So if we're a consultant or contractor going into multiple orgs, we want to be able to do this everywhere we go. We don't want to have to rewrite this all the time. We want it to be portable, modular, so like I don't have to worry about what the schema is in this particular org. I can just point the tool at it, run it, and I get results and have a look. We could come up with a whole load of queries, and I saw this is where some of this stuff came from. Was I think it was a little bit of a snippet on Git of someone had listed out all the useful queries they run when they get a new org. I thought, that's great, I'll take that. And you can run all those queries in Developer Console, manually tabulate all the results in a spreadsheet. Have you fallen asleep yet? Yeah, we don't want to do that. So, I hate spreadsheets, the bane of my life. So what I decided I would use Python because I didn't really know how to use Python. I thought I could do with learning something new. I lied about the spreadsheet thing. I did actually have to use a spreadsheet because they are a bit of a killer app. So I've built a Python tool to learn Python and save me a whole load of bother because I'm pretty lazy as well. And I call it the Salesforce org scanner because I'm also really bad at naming stuff. What does it do? How does it build? Right, so it's, to be honest, built mostly off the back of the work done in the simple Salesforce module, which if you haven't encountered it is awesome. It wraps up most of the Salesforce APIs you're going to want to use in really easy to use Python classes. It's open source, so if you find a bug in it, you can fix it yourself, publish it and get it sorted, which is great. You take that list of useful queries, you use pandas for making nice data frames, for manipulating large amounts of data nice and easily, and then because you're pretty old school, you don't bother putting it in a nice web UI because that's really hard. I can't do that. I'm not a front-end developer at all. As you will see when you see the UI that I built, you use TK and you make a nice little retro app to give you a nice interface that sits on top of Python, or you just run it from the console. But some of the people in my organisation are UI based, so to make it kind of usable for them, I thought I'll give them a UI.
You skipped a step.
What's the step I skipped?
Then you go on LinkedIn and you put all of that in your skills.
That's the next bit, once I can tag this video. So this is what it looks like. I've got a screenshot here. I might jump out and actually show you it working in a minute. As you can see, it looks horrible. I'm not a UI developer. But we've got the main things here. We can put in our credentials. We can list out which objects we're interested in, because we might not be interested in all of them, but we might, you never know. You can save out that config to a config file if you want, load it back in, point it at different orgs. You can tell it where you want to store the data. That's pretty much all you need it to do, really. And then it does two things. It will either, and there's two buttons there for the two things that it does. It will scan the org, looking for those smells, or it will export a data dictionary, which will take all of the fields and all of the objects that you've listed here and extract all the metadata for them, all the pick list data, even the global pick list values, which you can't get through the normal API. You have to use the the deployment API to do, download the XML, do a load of transformation to get it looking into a nice table. Right, so what were we looking for? So I've shown you the result. How are we going to get there? We're looking for smelly data and smelly metadata. What sort of data smells, and this is one to the floor now, so I want your hands up and I want your answers flowing. What sort of data smells can you get in a Salesforce org? What's bad about Salesforce data? Duplicates? Okay. Sorry? Inconsistent data? Yep. Incomplete?
Same data point in different fields.
Same data point in different fields. Oh, that's a subtle one. I don't think I can find that one. That's going to be hard. Any other ideas? Blank fields? Okay. All good things, great ideas. I didn't think of any of those. So this is what I put in it.
It's a roadmap.
Yeah. I put in high record volume. So objects that have lots of records causes things to be slow. Old records, so stuff that hasn't been updated, which is the stale records. So stuff that was created ages ago and hasn't been used. Profiles that are sitting there with no users, that's a metadata smell. Well, is it metadata? Yeah. It's kind of on the edge, isn't it? And then my two favourites, which are ownership skew and lookup skew. Oh, right, okay. Anybody want to describe ownership skew? 10,000 records to one owner is ownership skew, and lookup skew is the same. It's any record that has looking up to it or pointing to it 10,000 records, and it causes problems with the sharing models. So this is an example of some of the output. So as you can tell, I output it into Excel because why not? I love it. No, I don't. With a pivot table. So you can see I've scanned this particular org, and this is the records created by year. You can see 2023 had most of the accounts created. Loads of contacts in 2023 and fewer rolling off to the left. And then there's 2 users that don't have a profile at all, which is fun. Lookup skew, so this is an assessment of the contact object. So you can see that there are 43,191 contact records all owned by the same person. Modified, like almost the same number that are last modified or created by. So that's probably an integration creating a whole load of contacts and not the ownership not changing. And then we've got an output here of the summary of that. So if you didn't want to go through counting up and go, oh, have I got skew here? Have I got skew there? I can generate a nice sheet with an output of whether or not there's skew on that object. And then you can dig into it, and it tells you which field has got skew in it. So the master record ID on contact has got skew because I don't know why that would be actually, but there's a lot of contacts for one particular account, and then the owner as well, and it points out the owner. So let's pause for a minute, take a breath. I found with that tool a whole load of problems. What are we going to do about them? Anyone got any ideas? Delete everything. Yep. Start again.
Remove the role from the owner.
Remove the role. Yep. From the owner. Sorry? Archive stuff. Yes.
Put the role at the top of the hierarchy as well.
Put them at the top of the role hierarchy. Yep. Excellent. I got a few of those things. So you could define an archival policy. You can remove the old data, update the stale data or delete it, and delete those orphan profiles. And, oh yeah, I jumped into what is skew here. I forgot I'd done that. There we go. Any user owning more than 10k records. Any record that is a parent of more than 10,000 children. So, refactor the ownership model. So reassign those records. Give them to people who actually want them. Put those owners of those 10k records outside of the role hierarchy, or put them at the top, which you suggested. Excellent. Lookup skew, similar situation. So there you could archive and delete the children you don't need, or you could split the parents up and keep the number of children below 10,000. Right, some metadata smells then. I've gone for... Anyone got any more? I've got Visual Force.
A single aura component.
Anyone got any more ideas for this? I've got high volume of Visual Force in the system, lots and lots of Apex classes, loads of triggers, Apex code for old API versions, especially ones that might now be being phased out, and scheduled jobs, multiple triggers on a single object, and multiple auto-launch flows on an object. Anything else in the metadata that could be bad?
I think you can search for this as SOCL, but would you want to look for sort of anti-patterns around getting around test coverage?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not sure
like
you can
1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1.
Yeah.
That's more of a static analysis thing, isn't it? You should be able to catch it with that.
Yeah. Anyway.
Workflow and process builder.
Oh yes, because they're being deprecated now. Yeah, workflow and process builder. I've got a lot from my roadmap here.
Still being on
S controls. Still being on classic. Yeah, that'd be a big red flag as soon as you log in. So here's a couple of outputs. So an org where they're going back to API version 34, and this particular org I checked has Aptus installed, and they seem to like putting multiple triggers on an object. There you go. What can we do about them? Well, you pretty much just got to get refactoring, haven't you? If you've got loads of Visual Force, migrate that to LWC if it's appropriate. If you've got loads of Visual Force Apex and triggers, remove the stuff that's not used, so you can detect that. And then you've got to open up every single Visual Force and Apex class, increase the API version, and then work out what's broken and fix that, which is great. I can't fix the tool doesn't do that for you, to be honest. I mean, that's just a sad day. The multiple triggers thing is like no one should be doing that. We've had trigger factories for ages, so yeah, sort that out. And follow the same thing for auto launch flows. Otherwise, you're just going to be in a complete mess. Use a flow dispatcher instead. Right. So I've rattled through that very quickly. I can summarize now, and then I can show you it actually kind of working. Why were we here? What was that smell? Where is it coming from? And how do I get rid of it? So I have covered all this. So we have understood why we're here by analysing an unhealthy org. We've identified the symptoms of an unhealthy org. We've seen how to find evidence of that org health. And we've talked about how to freshen it up and clean it up. So, any questions before I break out into an impromptu demo? Yes?
Yes, for when we enter a new custom, actually the problem I encounter most is the test classes, because even if we detect something, because the APS classes are really crowded and highly complex, it's a little hard to really rewrite or update the test classes in order to just do the deployment, because in the sandbox it's easy to do the updates, but it's highly time consuming to make updates to the production of. So my question is, are you also the test classes or the coverage of API classes? Because most of the time you can even hard to determine which API class is covered by which test classes, because sometimes really we should use more than one test class.
Yeah, it's a really good question about whether this tool can detect the test coverage of existing Apex classes. No, it doesn't. I wonder how I would be able to do that. I think the test coverage is stored somewhere, isn't it? So it might be possible to retrieve that and report on it. That would be useful. Would you have to run the tests in production or in the org first to generate that if it hadn't been already generated? Maybe.
Between sandboxes, normally I just try to do deployment by using standard by running tests. Even if I do the deployment between sandboxes, in order to test the coverage, I just do the between sandbox. But this is a hot. Most of the time, really, I am struggling.
Yeah.
To really cover the coverage.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you can trigger a test run without having to do a deployment. Is there something in the Hammer stuff for that? I don't know.
Something that is not like I just had a conversation about this week, and it's not covered by like Salesforce either, or anything that I can see. Is how like when you cover your code, you actually call your method directly to check that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, or are you checking end to end? And if you are calling the method directly, you have the reference in the test classes, and you don't need to run anything to find those methods.
Oh, I see. So you could analyze the text.
You analyze the text to see
Yeah.
if you actually call the method anywhere in your class, in your test.
Yeah. Yeah, that could work.
But that might not work if you have, for example, a scheduled class that runs logic that exists in another class. So your test might be calling the scheduled class, but it's not going to be calling the class with the actual logic.
Yeah.
But then you should have a different test to cover that.
Depends. Quite often,
Like in
you have the same
org
logic
itself.
extracted, but you have an invocable method for it. Maybe you have a queuable method, a queuable class for it. So you can have that logic, and you know, testing it in one place is not
Okay, I
the
can
worst.
be more specific, and I'll say if you're using static methods, they should be called directly in a test class for coverage. I can be more specific.
For stat, okay, static. Fine.
About the point. Static reference.
Yes.
So my challenge always is when I'm joining a new client and there are lots of flows and process builders and lots of emails being sent out. I never know what emails are being sent from where.
Cool.
So
That's a
normally
good
you
one.
have to try to delete email alert, and that's how you find out in which process builder it's being used. But now with the flows and emails being built in the flow, you can't really find out how emails are sent and where from. Is there a way to scan the org for those emails?
Can I answer that? 'Cause I
Yeah,
haven't
go
got
for
a problem yet. So I do SOCL query the email template, and you could, I think you can query like using subject as part of your query, whereas you can't do body, you know, as part of your work. Or,
Do you wanna
that's
use
what I
that?
would do. Oh, sorry, did no one hear that?
No.
Repeat it. No, I just said I've had the same problem.
Oh, is that one not on?
I've obviously used these before.
Obviously.
Hello? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So yeah, in the past when I've had that problem, I would just go into Workbench and query on the email template object. And you can, in your way, you can just use like the subject, because it'll let you do that, whereas you can't actually query for the text of the email, because it won't let you.
But would you then? But how do you work out which flows it's in?
No, not flows.
Ah.
That'll just normally when I'm trying to find the email template, but in terms of, I mean, I think the other. Sorry.
Yeah, to the,
The other day, I don't know how to put it.
You've just turned it off again.
Sorry, Alright, I'm terrible. I'm going to hand it back.
So I guess if you can get the XML for the flow definition, you could probably write something that searches for the name of the email template you're looking for.
No, we're getting to VS Code.
Repo and you scan through the repo. You don't need
Stick it out to VS Code.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
even if I don't know the name of the email, I just want to scan.
So if you download your flows into a VS Code project,
Okay.
you can just do a search in the text for keywords in that email that you're looking for.
Okay.
You don't even like when you
I don't have the keywords though. I just want all the emails.
So you could do that by the,
Yeah.
Flows?
And
You can
from
probably
where?
just look
From
for
which
the
flow?
send email action, maybe.
if there's a tag in the XML for that.
The key though is downloading them as XML files through VS Code, so that you can search through all of the flows as text.
Okay.
Can you really easily write it to
But hey, Martin, you can put it on your roadmap.
I could definitely put it on my roadmap. Yeah.
Actually, download the project and then rifle through it with Python would be a really effective.
Also, on that subject, if you
Yeah.
look at email message records, the ones sent through email templates will have headers in them that show that they're automatic emails. The ones that have blank headers would be ones constructed in the flow
Okay.
inside a sent email.
Okay. And how do you find out?
By looking at the header field.
Okay.
If it's empty, then it was built inside the flow. If you have If you have headers in there, then they were using an email
Okay,
template.
that's in XML packet as well.
No, that's in the email message record in your environment.
Okay.
You can query that.
Okay. Good, thank you.
So this is an example of the output of the tool, which is a nasty Excel spreadsheet. Even though, so it tells you what the scope was, so what you asked for. It uses the awesome limits API endpoint to get a full list of all the record counts for every object in the system, which is awesome, which also allows you to shortcut, I want every object in the system, so you just go to here and you just select that, go to the bottom, paste it into the UI, which is, where's that gone? Over here, which you can start from the console, paste it into this box here, and then rerun it. Where did that go? It's over here. So yeah, then we got all of the objects, the stats for them, so how many fields are on each object, how many child objects there are, or child relationships. The pick list values for each object, and my colleagues asked for this they wanted a tab per object, but you can also bring it all together.
Does it do dependent like that?
No, not yet. I was quite proud of getting global pick list values because they were a pain. There we go. Global value sets. Oh, there weren't any in this org. That's annoying. Oh yeah, the countries and the states. Ever wanted to do that? Extract the list of countries and states that are defined in Salesforce.
Wow.
Ever tried?
Every day.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to move them between orgs, you need to know what people have configured, but there's no way of getting them out unless you... well, I've seen people previously scrape the HTML on the page to do that. But yeah, you can actually get them out through the API as well. And then there's a one tab as well with all the fields in scope across everything. So if you have a data dictionary, that's the data dictionary output. And then there's the scanning output, which gives you the underlying data for some of those graphs, the report on skew, the object stats. Yeah, again, that's the same as I've just shown you. Record type distributions. Oh yeah, attachments as well. That was fun. Counting the attachments based on what data type they are. List of all the reports in the system. Public and private attachments. Attachments by object. Which objects have got the most attachments on them? Yeah, all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Would that be just a public type of public report? Would it include private reports in private folders?
Let's see.
The number of times you could go,
I think that's only the public ones, because I don't think you can see the private ones, even as an admin. I don't think you can access them at all. So yeah, I don't think I can get around that. So here's some code. Yeah, well, it's actually code. A lot of use of pandas data frames to take the queries out from. So simple Salesforce will return you a nice array, but you can then convert that nicely to a pandas data frame and output it and do what you want. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. If you're interested in knowing a bit more, let me know. Sorry?
Where can we get hold of it?
You can't at the moment. But I might be able to give some pointers. I'm not sure I can release this as open source. I don't know if Slalom would let me do that. But maybe one day I won't be working for Slalom. You never know. Sorry? Yeah, all my inventions are covered by that contract, unfortunately, which makes it awkward. But yeah, not that this is much of an invention. It's just a lot of reuse of existing stuff.
I thought you wrote all this in your volunteer days, didn't you, your charity days?
It would still count. That contract's pretty tight. Is any invention during the period of employment? Yeah. Cool. There we go.
Great, I was preempting. Let's have a question. How often are you running this on your customers at Startup? Is it one of the first things you do now across the board? Or
Well, yeah. Usually, someone rings me up or messages me on Teams and says, "Hey, I need a data dictionary. Can you run it on on my client's org?" I say, "Right, give me the credentials, and I'll run it for you." And I am trying to get people engaged with it and roll it out. Being Python, it has to be set up on their laptops with all the the libraries and stuff. So it's a bit of a faff. It's not as good as a UI tool. A colleague of mine is taking this and is going to try and build the equivalent, but in Salesforce. So using the queries and stuff, and see if we can get it to work that way. I think one of the difficult things would be the amount of data it's pulling and queries it's running, which we might have to juggle around limits and things like that. But yeah, trying to use it more often. It's certainly helpful for the BAs and the functional teams when they have to generate a data dictionary, rather than going through every object, screenshotting or pulling down stuff from plugins and things. They can just run it and they tell me what objects they want and they execute it. Yes, Trooper.
Do you use it at the end of a project to see how far you got?
Could do, yeah. I haven't finished a project for that in that situation yet. But yeah, it could be helpful for documenting as well. If you've got to provide a list or an audit trail of which objects have been added, or what you've done.
Yeah, so for the data dictionary, there's actually something out there on its cloud toolkit, which I use on built on Heroku.
Yeah.
It does lots of stuff for that. Pretty neat if you want.
They are, yeah. I've used a few of those sorts of things. It's pretty cool. Yeah, but I just like being able to tweak it exactly how I want it and learn a bit of Python, which was fun. So yeah, that's it really. Any more questions? Or we can wrap up. Cool. Thank you very much.